Start. I need to hold this so that the 4 people there, hello, can see. Morning, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm from LGFL. We do all sorts of things for schools, but particularly my area is safeguarding and cybersecurity. Where's my clicker? Um, if you did want, I think they'll send you all these slides later, but I couldn't be bothered to write everything on there. But if you want, you can look at that and find out all of our contact details. If you wanted to find out a bit more. So safeguarding is one of my key areas. We do lots with schools around technology. So online safeguarding is a particular strength of what we do at my organization. In terms of this week, my relevance for this is I've worked, for example, with the Digital Policy Alliance, looking at lots of age verification and identity verification things as part of their safety tech group over the past couple of years, looking at the Online Safety Bill, now Act, and so on. And also as part of my job working with schools, and if you work with schools on this area, then you're instantly talking about parents and parental controls and things like that. That often comes back to age verification and things like that. So, lovely. Oh, I think we need to pause because Zoom has signed us out, and therefore they've all been cut off. I think. Zoomy people, someone say something if you're still there.
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Oh, okay. It just flashed up. Zoom has signed you out, but okay, fine. Just need to make my slides work again. Oh, there we go. Jolly good. Okay, I'll try not to touch it again. But sorry, I need to hold this. But if anyone's got questions on the chat, do please pop them in, and I probably won't see them, especially now that the screen's going a bit mad. But we'll do our best. Right. So as I was saying, normally with all the things that we do around online safety, it always comes back to, at the end of the day, to something to do with either age or identity of the user. So I thought that might be something particularly interesting to look at today. I'm trying to get Gen AI to make me a picture of mobile devices always coming back to it. Didn't quite work, but that's what that's supposed to be. You'll see some interesting pictures this morning. But it often does come back to that as well, whether we're talking about the harms that children are experiencing in schools, or whether it is the different ways in which they're trying to be helped, whether that's by industry with parental controls or whatever it is, whether those controls work or not, often comes back to the fact that we don't know who the user is or how old they are. So that has become a bit of a passion of mine as well, because it often seems wherever you go in the world of online harms, these things come back to it at the end. So believe it or not, I'm trying not to say too much this morning, but because I promised to be talking about the voice of the child and the young person, so I've got a few videos to show. And these are some young people that I filmed over the past few weeks that hopefully will give a bit of light to what they are thinking about this issue. We will come back specifically to age verification and what they say about that kind of thing in a minute, but I thought we'd start in general with some words of what they think in general. Oh, sorry, I broke it by trying to turn it up.
play in one game and all the 9-year-olds could play in a different game. Like, so then the age groups are different, and then adults can play in another round.
Okay, so we'll hear some more from them in just a second. Hopefully it did not escape your attention that some of these things already exist. And I thought that was quite interesting as well. My colleagues suggested I should chop them out, but actually I thought it was really interesting when they say it should be like this, and actually, for example, YouTube Kids does exist, and so on. And I think that tells us a lot about the effectiveness of some of the protections online that children are saying, oh, this would be good, but actually it's already there, so it's not working. So why is it not working? And there were some quite interesting opinions on things like YouTube Kids and so on that we'll come back to in a bit. And obviously contradictions as well. I'll be showing you lots of contradictions because obviously not everyone agrees, and children don't always know what's best for them, do they? But if we're thinking about age verification and the granular level that it could be at, often the discussion is very binary. It's either about being 13 or not, or being 18 or not. But often there are lots more granular levels that would be useful for younger children, if we think of primary school, for example, where they consider themselves to be quite different to those only a couple of years younger and older than them. So if we stick with these same children, we did then go on to ask them specifically about age verification and how that's used for them. So I'll just hit play on the next one.
Do you sometimes go on games that are your age? Yeah. Oh, well, I don't think you should go. Do you agree? No.
If it's because of like the graphics and stuff, then I think like it doesn't really matter. You should still be able to go on it. But if it's like just because you can text strangers, I think you're kind of like trustworthy not to do that.
If it mattered so much, then they would have put like more restrictions on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you agree that there should be age restrictions on games?
On some games, like if it's like 18 plus, then yeah, I don't think you should go on it. But like Snapchat, everyone goes in it in my class and they're only 10 when it's 13 plus.
Yeah. Would you like if the apps were for people more like for our age?
Yeah, but like YouTube Kids, for example, it's a good app, but I feel like it's a bit too big. Yeah, some of them are like games, but some of them are texting platforms. For the games, I think there shouldn't really be an age restriction unless they're like showing certain pictures.
Yeah. Do you sometimes get asked your age on like things?
Yeah, but sometimes I lie about my age to be able to get onto it.
Do you feel safe like on apps more like 16 plus apps?
50-50, because if I say that there's going to be like lots of people, I would feel very uncomfortable. But if it was just like, for example, my friends or cousins or family members, I wouldn't really be uncomfortable.
How do they get you to put in your age?
Normally you type in your age, your date of birth, or they just don't ask you, so it's really easy to lie and you can just play anyway.
So some really interesting quotes there, I thought, and interesting. I know anyone who's here at this summit this week will be well aware that age assurance, age verification can be slightly more than typing in a date of birth that is older than 18, but that remains for most of them their experience of how to get on things or not. We're not trying to pick on particular platforms, but as the young lady said, everyone in my class is on Snapchat and we're 10, and that won't be for the first time, and there'll be plenty of classes a lot younger that are on there as well. Because I'm working in education, a lot of the time teachers and parents get told, okay, it's your job, you need to fix this. And I think that's very interesting as well in terms of how do we get the balance between regulation between education and the different stakeholders that are trying to help in that way as well. But of course, it's also interesting to know, yes, we're trying to support the voice of the child, but they don't necessarily always understand the harms, because I wrote down one of the best quotes for me was, surely they would have better age restrictions if you actually needed it. And I think that tells you a lot about, you know, some of the naivety that is there. And that's no aspersion on children, because to be honest, parents will often say the same things as well. When we're working with schools who are working with families, often parents will have the same attitude of, if it were that bad, they would be more rigorous with their age control. So I think there are lessons there that need to be learned, both from governments who are legislating and setting up regulators around the world, but also for industry if they want to actually work with these to achieve some of these things. So let's move on. Something other than a video for now as well. Have a look at these two quotes. I'll read them out in case you can't see them on Zoom. The first one is, I don't really go online, I just use YouTube and Snapchat. I'll come back to that. And the other one is, I set up the router for my dad and put the controls on. So they've both got some really interesting things. They were ones that I've heard while doing focus groups with children in schools. So if you're from another country, year 8 would be about 13, 14 years old. So that is particularly interesting for me working in education, because often children and young people will have education, I almost want to say, inflicted upon them, where they can repeat back to their teacher, oh, if I go online, I do this. And then everyone wonders why actually they do the opposite when they go home, and then problems come in from home or from the playground. And often it's because we're totally talking past their heads in terms of the language. So that's another thing that I think is really important for all stakeholders to be able to understand, that often we can totally, we can say something, they can repeat it back to us, they might even mean it, but if for them, YouTube and Snapchat isn't even online, it's just a thing they do on their device, because online is only a thing that you get taught about for this magic world that doesn't actually exist for them, then it's easy to miss the mark with that as well. And then on the other side, to the second quote there, because of the way that lots of these restrictions are set up. So we were talking in this instance, I believe, about parental controls on home internet, but the same can apply for devices, operating systems, platforms, as you know. That whereas, as we all know, a lot of money is spent on UX, on design, user experience, to make things easy to use, one does get the impression not quite so much is spent on making it easy to use to turn on controls. And children are very aware of that. Often they're very helpful at helping out their parents, but it's not exactly going to be effective. So if we look forward to a world where you get a new home internet or whatever device you want to talk about, and the age verification becomes mandatory on it, or identity, because obviously you'll have various people in the house, but it's so complicated that the children need to set it up, it's probably not going to be that effective. And these are the sorts of things that we are being told every time we are going into schools. I'm not going to talk through this, but I believe there's some Ofcom representatives here today, but this came out last month as well, just on that topic, so I thought I'd flag that up in case anyone wanted to read that rather interesting report. So moving on from controls, just to think about some other protections as well that often come into play, whether we are thinking about setting up age verification or alternatives to it. Often you will hear about platforms that have other controls where it's said that this is the reason why it is safe enough, because, for example, we have rigorous moderation or reporting and so on. So I think probably the left one with black and green might be hard to read, so I'll read it out for the Zoom people. Adults don't get it. Blocking can make it worse, and saying ignore them is the worst advice ever. We're in the 21st century, you can't ignore them. And the other quote talks about random account bullying, where lots of reporting was happening, but nothing was ever done about it. So I think, whereas this week is the Global Age Assurance Summit, that really reflects to us the whole issue of identity verification as well, because I know there are some places where if you go and buy a mobile phone, they're a bit stricter in terms of age verification, but then of course who is using that device comes into play as well. And even though, again, we spend lots of time teaching young people about not sharing passwords, it's even less likely to be the case at home where one device might be verified in one way or another. So hopefully a kind of rich tapestry or verification through the stack is probably something that's needed. And that's something that children are often coming back to us about. So following the green quote about what about what adults and grown-ups don't get, we asked, I think we're still on the same pupils for now, but we asked them, what are some things that adults just don't understand about the online world? And this is what they said.
So your parents will tell you to turn off your game when you're playing to go eat dinner. You will go eat dinner, and then the whole time you're trying to tell them something, and they'll be scrolling on their phones, going on whatever media they're on.
The weird thing is, if we took away their phones or devices, they would be really angry at us.
My mom goes scrolling on her phone forever. About like 8 o'clock in the morning, she's scrolling on her phone. But how come we're not allowed the time to go on our electronic gadgets?
So there was lots more on that. We've got some of these on YouTube if you wanted to watch the longer versions. But there's some so many examples, essentially, of hypocrisy. This is another Gen AI image that it took me a very long time to get and still doesn't quite make sense. But that's adults on their phones while children are looking grumpy, if you're wondering. But often when we are talking to schools, whether it's the younger ones, in a second I'll show you some teenagers as well talking, it's this underlying hypocrisy, they might not use that word, double standards, however you want to understand it, that really undermines a lot of these things. So it can undermine the education, it can undermine the messages going to parents or from parents to children, and also in terms of legislating in this space as well, that's really key as well. If we're either using the wrong language that people don't understand or is meaningless to them, or we're giving them one message. And you're seeing the other day today, one good example of that is online behavior. Children get taught at school, you should behave in the same way online as you do offline, presuming that's in a good way. But then, of course, not many adults do that. We don't need to think of Donald Trump. There are many other examples of people who are keyboard warriors and particularly unpleasant online and totally different. And it's just one of these things that often undermine what's being said to children and young people that can be really challenging in this area. So we're going to pop on now to some older students from secondary school, talk about what they think that adults don't get.
They always constantly try to put the separation, oh, you're not living in the real world, you're ignoring the real world, when I find them to be very much interconnected. There are elements that are in the real world, elements that are in the online world. And just because some elements are associated with the online world, it doesn't make everything else invalid, such as making an online friend. By a lot of parent standards, simply the fact they're online and they're not geographically close means their friendship means little. But at least for me, I find a lot of the time online friends can be some people I confidently confide in. I feel like they think of the internet as anything done on the internet as a lesser form of doing it. Whilst for us, I feel like we see it more so as an alternate way to do it.
Okie dokie. So then again, very eloquently put by some of these older ones, the hypocrisy or lack of understanding comes back to it a lot in what we are hearing, whether it's, for example, online friends. Lots of adults are now married to people they met online. Lots of adults have online friends as well. But children and young people are often getting told, you know, that they're not real friends, and somehow it's being undermined. So if we think to looking around the world, excuse me, and for example, American states, at the minute, there's lots of activity happening in America where individual states are trying to block social media for young people. Often what we are being told by them is actually they don't want it to be blocked. And of course, one might argue it doesn't matter what they say if it's not good for them, but they're saying let's just make it safer, and there's lots that can be done in that area to do that. And as time is short, I'm just going to hop on to the next one because I want to have time for a bit of questions if anyone's got any at the end.
So, did you go on any 13 plus sites when you were a kid?
I did go on some sort of maybe messaging apps that technically weren't, age appropriate. For example, terms and conditions said 30 plus, wasn't exactly that age. But I think when using them, it's maybe as long as your parents understand what you're using, and maybe if your parents moderate what you're sending, I think that's a way that you can utilize these apps for good, these messaging apps and just chatting apps, because of course social media is very good for socializing with people. So as long as in moderation, and as long as you have consent from your parents, I think that can be a way to utilize them for good.
Additionally, I feel like companies need to be careful around the situation, because outright banning anyone they catch under 13 could, in a way, cause more damage. It causes kids to become more reliant on lying about things, pretending to be someone they're not, which creates a rather toxic person, I'd imagine. As they grow older, they get more used to lying, and it devolves into a worse situation. Do you think if there was a way to actually properly check someone's age before they go on the website, we should make websites for people of younger ages, such as websites specified for 10-year-olds?
Overall, I think yes. Even though there's some apps which seem to have slightly more ridiculous age ratings, I think overall we should, because there is danger. And I think if there is a presence of danger, no matter how strong it is, it could always escalate. So having these apps that are specific for children, specific for older teens or adults, having these things can prevent inappropriate messages, inappropriate pictures, all these things that are dangerous and that can influence people's lives.
Okay, so I'm not going to devalue that by saying much about it because I think that was very clear in terms of what they were saying as well. But I did just want to chop off the very last line of the video to play that separately. Given we're at an age verification summit this week, the final line they said was...
There's nothing companies can really do to make sure that we're 18 or 16 or 13.
So that is the official voice of young people in England today. They don't think it's going to work. So for those of you who are from regulators or age verification companies or anything like that, I think you can take that as your challenge for the week to see if you can make that work. So oops. I'm back on Friday doing a slot, which is more of an interactive one at 11, I think. Oh, no, 10. If anyone's about and fancies joining me for that, where we'll be workshopping and doing lots of talking and breakout rooms if you're on Zoom, things like that. But otherwise, that's it from me. While someone's trying to eject me from the room, were there any questions or comments either online or in the room?
Yes, please.
Go for it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ijoma Basi from Nigeria. We could not hear the videos, so the comments that the children just made, we didn't hear their words. Yes.
Sorry, was that the case all through?
I believe so. There's some comments in the chat.
Yes, the volume was low. So, Mark, can you share us the YouTube link as you with where there is a full recording?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think they're sending out the slides next week, so they will do. Apologies, you should have said at the beginning because the tech guy did test it before and said the volume.
We did. We did. Someone said that. Elizabeth said at the very beginning that the volume was low. And I think sending us the slides next week is a bit of, it's a little late. We'd like to follow, the session today.
Okay. Well,
so could you
I'm
put
not
the link?
part of the conference organizer, so I don't know, but I'll pass that on.
Well, then could you interpret or could you repeat what they said or, have it typed out in the chat? Because we're not following with the videos at all. And we came here to hear the children's voices. We're not hearing them.
I get that. I'm sorry about that, but they are chucking us out of the room, so I can't do it now, I'm afraid.
Okay.
All right, sorry. Anyone in the room got any questions? Otherwise, I think we'll stop. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for coming. Maybe you should have stayed in the room because you can hear the things. Could you all hear?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, the camera guy before was here.